Hello. Welcome to your regularly scheduled episode. That came out really weird because I didn't actually want to say the word regularly, and then I did instead. If you hear any weird crinkling like that, it's because I also am dyeing my hair at the same time. But I forgot that I had to wear headphones over my head, so I just put a plastic bag on top of my head. Women in STEM, am I right? Okay. I don't know if I have any updates for you. If you didn't listen, if you're not a subscriber, I was a little off last week because I had COVID for the second time. Luckily, it was very, very mild. I honestly wouldn't have known if I didn't lose my taste for a hot second, which prompted me to test for it, and it was super positive. It lit up right away, and the line was so dark. I was like, Jesus Christ. So I was a little behind last week. And I also decided to do the subscription episodes on Mondays instead of Fridays. I had asked a while ago people's thoughts on that. I know for myself personally, as a listener of podcasts, I don't listen to podcasts over the weekend because I'm just busy doing other stuff. But Monday morning, it's nice to have something to listen to get me started throughout the week because my podcasts that I listen to are Tuesday, Wednesday, things like that. So it's nice to have something to look forward to right when I go back to work. Nobody really had any thoughts at all. I didn't get many responses, so I just decided to make the switch. So I released the first episode this Monday, and then your next subscriber episode will be next Monday. And next Monday's episode is a really good one, and it's a little long, but it's just so interesting that I can't believe I had never heard of it before. So if you're not a subscriber, you really should be. You get a bonus episode every single week. I do 4 bonus episodes a month. Even if I sometimes have to miss a release day, I'll release 2 in the same week to make sure you get the 4. If you subscribe on Apple, it's only $5 a month. If you subscribe on Patreon, it gets as low as $2.50 a month. Apple just takes such a big cut from me that I have to make it $5. You obviously don't have to pay that. You can get it cheaper on Patreon, but Apple is also the more convenient way to do it. I prefer to do it with the podcast I listen to that way. But the Patreon is always there. $2.50 a month gets you the 4 bonus episodes, and that's that. There are higher tiers where you can get early access and things like that. I will eventually, in the new year, start video recording these again. It's going to be very boring, but I do find myself gesturing a lot as if I am speaking to someone live in the flesh. So it might be worth it. So I will start doing that in the new year. I just sort of had to catch up, rebranding, then the holidays happen. And I think after the new year starts, we will be in a really good spot to pick up all of that extra stuff that I've had to ignore for a little bit. So all of that to say, subscribe to the bonus episodes. You're missing out. And for this week, I am doing The Murder of Stephen Beard, which I also had never heard of before. I actually, when I referenced last week in the final episode of Amanda Knox, I referenced doing a longer case. This isn't even the one that I had in mind. This just sort of fell into my lap, and it was so interesting that I was starting to do an outline for it, and it just fell together so easily. So a longer episode is still coming. Hi, Harvey. But it is not this one that I was speaking of. So this all starts. Celeste Johnson was born February 13th, 1963. She was adopted. It was said she only met her biological mother once, and she basically told Celeste that she wasn't her mother. She was just an incubator for her. She was also adopted by Edwin and Nancy Johnson. She was one of 4 adopted children. Celeste had claimed she was abused as a child and that she had attempted suicide during puberty. At 17, she got pregnant and went on to have twins, Jennifer and Christina. She married their father, Craig Bratcher. That marriage obviously didn't last long. They were 17, and it was also abusive, tumultuous. There were restraining orders involved. The 2 ended up divorcing in 1983 when she was 20. So all of that to say, Celeste was not having a good go of life right off the bat. Harvey is actually laying down next to me while I record, and she has never done this before, and she's making tiny biscuits on me, and I am just so happy. Cats should be like medicine. Like, you should just be allowed to get a cat if you're sad, because they make everything so much better. Oh, hi, sweet baby. Also, I did switch out the cord to this microphone, so if you hear it cut out, then I don't know what the hell the problem is. Maybe the microphone. I could switch out microphones. Okay, so married and divorced by the time she was 20. Marriage would prove to be a kind of hobby for Celeste. Not long after that, she married Harold Wolf, an Air Force mechanic. The two divorced in 1991. After that, she moved to Arizona, where she had a brief stint in jail for insurance fraud. She tried to casually light a car on fire that she had reported missing. Not the greatest idea. I do respect insurance fraud, though. Go get yours, I guess. Just don't be dumb about it. She then married a man named Jimmy Martinez. She nicknamed his nether regions. These are moments I wish Taryn was here, because this would have been like a great thing for us to discover together. She nicknamed his nether regions BMW, standing for Big Mexican Wiener. When I read that, I was like, that must be included. Shockingly, that marriage didn't work out either, if you are at all surprised by that. She then moved to Austin, Texas. So she is now, at this time, in her 30s. She's a single mom. She lives in a new city. So she starts working at the Austin Country Club, which honestly, if you are going to be a waitress of sorts, a country club, I feel, is the way to go. Or I have a friend, Sam, who worked at like a golf course club type of combo situation, very fancy. And it just sounded like the greatest place. And then she met her husband there, which is like even greater. No, she shouldn't have to work anymore because she's married and having a baby. And that should be the rules. Anyway, it's at this country club that Celeste met Steven and Elise Beard, a couple in their 60s who were regulars there. Elise got cancer and ended up dying fairly quickly on October 13th, 1993. Not so shockingly, Steven did not do well. It reminded me of when Donna's mom leaves Donna's dad. Don't step on the buttons, please. Can we just cuddle? Can we get a... Please don't do that. What I was saying, it reminded me of when Donna's mom left Donna's dad in that 70s show, and he's wandering around the store with like 47 frozen Salisbury steak dinners, and that lady finds him and was like, let me help you. That's what this reminded me of. Like, this man surely cannot survive by himself. Elise was his first and only wife. They had been together for around 45 years. So just like, he's heartbroken, and I'm assuming very lost without Elise, but like companionship in general. So he was actually the one who started to latch on to Celeste rather quickly. 3 weeks after Elise's death, they had their first date. He was 68 and she was 30, just to put the age gap there. Celeste said, I wanted somebody to take care of me, and he wanted someone to take care of. She's like, he just knew what I needed at the time, and that's sort of how all of this started. Now, if you're thinking, I see what Steven is getting out of this, but what could Celeste possibly be getting out of this? Well, Steven was obviously mega rich. He worked in radio and advertising in Dallas in the 1950s and 60s, starting at the bottom and climbing steadily up the business ladder. He switched to TV in the 70s, and by 1981, he had found great success as a partner and general manager of KBVO in Austin. In 1985, the station became one of the original affiliates of Fox Network. So like one of the first actual like Fox News channels. And on October 3rd, 1994, a year after his wife's death, Steven sold his shares of the station for like a ton of money. I think I read his net worth was around like $12 million. So he's not like regular rich, he's rich. Their first Christmas together, December 1993, literal months after Elise had died, he gave Celeste a $16,000 diamond cocktail ring, a $3,000 wristwatch, and a new Ford Explorer. He ended up asking her to move in with him in January of 1994. So 3 or 4 months after Elise had died, he asked her to move in. The two would end up getting married in 1995. So if you hear that, that's Harvey, I'm sorry. So a bit of a wait considering how fast everything else went. I was kind of shocked that they got married a year after that because it had been progressing so fast. I thought this was going to be one of those things where like 5 months later they're married. But they did wait. First, Celeste had to sign a prenup that granted her $500,000 maximum if they divorced. Goes without saying, there was no similar clause if he died and she was widowed. On February 18th, 1995, Celeste and Steven were married at the Austin Country Club. A neighbor, Robert Dennison, who was also 74, so more around Steven's age, recalled he said they didn't have anything in common except his money. From the start, Beard's 3 children, because he does have 3 full-blown adult children, also wondered whether Celeste was out for his money. His daughter, Becky, said, I wasn't happy about the relationship, but Dad was really happy, so they just sort of, like, ignored it. Like, even perhaps if she was mostly in it for the money, he was still happy regardless, so who are they to sort of, like, after the loss of his wife, give him a hard time about doing what he can to stay happy? The marriage didn't go great. They had virtually no sex life because Celeste did not want to have sex with him. Shortly after the wedding, Steven also found out Celeste was stealing from him. His banker had told him that Celeste was taking loads of jewelry out of his safety deposit box, jewelry that had belonged to Elise, not just like any jewelry. He ended up filing for divorce from Celeste after just a few months. However, they sort of worked it out. Celeste found a nice loophole to keep him happy and to keep her married to him, which is what they would call Sunday service. They would have oral sex on Sundays. Allegedly, she would yell, I gotta go make some money. She would tell her daughters and anyone else within earshot that she was headed to her bedroom on Sundays to do what they do on Sundays. But she also hated this. She essentially really hated this man. I don't know if she ever liked him from the beginning, but as soon as it seems like she had what she wanted, which was access to his money, she was like not into it at all anymore. So you're probably thinking that everything's working out perfect and like ready to go now. They've worked it all out. Well, guess what? You're wrong. Guess what? Still not working. The problem now? Money. Obviously, she knew he had a lot of it, and she was spending a lot of it. It was said that she had a huge problem with the $500,000 prenup. She brought it up constantly. So he finally got so sick of it that he was like, okay, fine, here, you can just have the $500,000 now. Which is just true insanity. If someone asked me for $50 right now, I would literally have to shuffle things around, and I still might not be able to give it to them. This man was so annoyed that his wife was complaining about $500,000 that he just gave it to her to shut her up. In his mind, he was like, this will shut her up for a while. This will, like, solve this problem for the foreseeable future. It didn't. She blew through $500,000 so alarmingly fast. I think they said after 6 months it was all gone. I think I would struggle with spending $500,000 in 6 months, and I can spend some money. If you take out the fact that, like, she didn't buy houses or cars or anything, that's an insane. Even if she did, it's not like she bought a $500,000 mansion. She already lives in a mansion. She maybe bought some cars here and there, but still, that's a ton of money. So he thought it would solve the problem. It didn't. It was gone within 6 months, half of a year. He also gave her a $10,000 month allowance. Oh my God. Just saying things like that out loud. I can't imagine having $10,000 a month. I literally cannot imagine it. Meanwhile, her hate for him was just growing. She would call him a fat bastard. She would say she wishes he would die already. So she was just spending his money, and she didn't even care because she didn't even like him. She had 3 walk-in closets that had hundreds of pairs of shoes, and each pair of shoes had a purse to match it. I read that multiple places because I thought that surely has to be something they exaggerated and made up, but it doesn't sound like it was. They said she could have gone a year and a half without wearing the same pair of shoes. That's how many shoes she had. That's insane. She once went on a $50,000 shopping trip. She would throw extravagant parties for her friends. The couple spent nearly $100,000 on a month-long trip to China in 1998. She's spending. She's spending some money. Alongside that, it was rumored that she was seeing one of her old husbands, Martinez, again, BMW. She would sneak out when Steven was asleep. It was also rumored she would crush up sleeping pills to get him to go to bed faster so she could do whatever she wanted, which is just problematic on its own. But the issue reached a crisis stage when Steven's accountant tallied up her 1998 holiday shopping, and she had spent nearly $300,000 on like presents, parties, entertainment, things like that. So total, that holiday season, she had spent $300,000. So he was finally like, listen, the spending, the sneaking around, like it has gotten too much for him. He threatened to divorce her or take away her credit cards. Well, Celeste, she was not about to go back to the way that she lived before this. So, like any level-headed person would do, she threatened to kill herself. Well, and I was kind of shocked by this. Steven sent her to like a super high-quality mental health facility called St. David's Pavilion, and she agreed because she would do anything to get her hands on this money. Obviously, she's not going to turn down, one, a trip away from him, and two, she's not going to willingly get a divorce instead of doing this. It was expensive, but Steven thought in the long run this would help him save money by hopefully getting her help. However, this would prove to be a terrible, terrible decision for him. Another person who was at St. David's was Tracey Tarlton. She was a 35-year-old lesbian who was the manager of a bookstore in the area. She was the daughter of a prominent lawyer in the Fort Worth area and had always struggled with her mental health. She had substance abuse problems. She had attempted suicide previously. She was just not doing well in general for a very long time. She was really thriving. When she discovered the bookstore that she worked at, she quickly became the manager. She became very involved in like the marketing of it. She was going on the news. She was in newspapers discussing books in the store and things like that. It was just like, seemed to be a very good fit for her. She was very happy there. However, one day in February of 1999, she suffered a very public nervous breakdown at work. She was yelling obscenity. She was threatening violence. Her family urged her to check herself into St. David's. And she could afford to go there, obviously, because her parents were also very rich. So they met at St. David's. They link up at St. David's. And then they transfer together to Timber Lawn, which is a different mental health facility in Dallas. These two could not be separated. They were apparently in love. Tracey would tell CBS that Celeste was extremely flirtatious with me from the beginning, and I responded in kind. Eventually, she came into my room and kissed me. She wanted to have a sexual relationship with me. Tracey claims that the two women first had sex on March 20th, 1999. Outside of the mental health facility, they made no attempt to cover up their relationship. A photo from a Book People party, that bookstore she worked at was called Book People. A photo from a Book People party shows Celeste sitting on Tracey's lap. Other partygoers would later say they saw the women kissing passionately. People who worked with Tracey and frequented the bookstore all knew Tracey was dating someone named Celeste. Tracey sent Celeste love letters. Celeste would send Tracey birthday cards addressed to the one I love. They became regular customers at an Austin Red Roof Inn. Like, they're spending a lot of time together, overnights, writing letters, kissing. They're like in a relationship. So, obviously, people caught on to this. Her daughter said they saw them kissing in September of 1999. They were called seeing books about being a lesbian around the house. And when they asked their mom about her relationship with Tracey, she would say that Tracey is a lesbian and she's in love with me. Isn't that funny? Just sort of like, this has nothing to do with me. Tracey's a lesbian. She loves me. Isn't that like kind of funny? Haha. Not at all admitting anything of her part. Celeste was less open to calling herself a lesbian. The two went to like a couples counseling in March of that year. It's like months after meeting, while she was married to someone else. They're like doing couples counseling together. They had met like 1 month earlier. And Celeste confided that she had to like be drunk to sleep with Tracey. So she had doubts that she was actually a lesbian. She's like, well, if I have to do this, this, and this to even do that, am I even a lesbian? Near the end of September 1999, Stephen Beard caught Celeste and Tracey kissing, and he literally, they said, ran Tracey out of his house. I don't know if like he chased her or what, but he ran Tracey out of the home. He was not at all into that. So Tracey wanted to help Celeste get out of her marriage because she had told Tracey some things about her terrible marriage to Steven. Celeste had told Tracey that Steven was abusive. She would say things like he belittled her, he taunted her, and beat her down emotionally. According to Celeste, she added that she feared that Steven would assault her if she threatened divorce, which is just funny because we all know that Celeste would never, ever threaten divorce. So she's just telling Tracey these things. She would tell Tracey the relationship left her feeling suicidal. Whether or not the extent of like the abuse and things like that are true, I'm not sure. There's like nothing to corroborate that. We have to believe people when they tell us they're abused because way more often than not, it's true. But I'm just not sure she is a believable person in this instance. So I have no idea if he really was abusive towards her. It didn't matter to Tracey, though. None of that mattered. She believed Celeste wholeheartedly. Not only did she want to save Celeste from this horrible situation, she also really wanted to marry Celeste and saw Steven as an obstacle in the way, which was a theme in Tracey's life. One of her therapists came out and said that Tracey told her that she had a self-destructive habit of falling passionately in love with married heterosexual women, which would make sense for this entire situation. These two, Celeste and Tracey, then came up with like a montage of terrible ways to try and murder Steven. Like, if this were a movie, it would be like that montage in Mean Girls when Katie Heron is trying to ruin Regina George's life and everything just turns out fine with that song, I'm Gonna Get You One Way or Another, and plays in the background. They tried botulism by trying to speed up food going bad and sprinkling it on his food. Well, it turns out he liked it and it did not kill him at all. They would switch out his regular vodka with like 190 proof grain alcohol and then fasten a plastic bag around his head when he was sleeping. That didn't work either. They dusted his food with sleeping pills. On one occasion, they dusted his food with 10 ecstasy tablets. None of this worked. I am telling you, this is a montage of terrible ideas. It's just like that scene when they're cutting like the nipples out of Regina George's shirt and then everyone just starts doing it. Or when she puts foot cream on her face and just makes her skin much better. This is what's going on with this trio of people right now. Then, late September, Celeste became like frantic. Her and Steven were supposed to go on a romantic trip to Europe. Obviously, Celeste did not want to do this. So she goes to Tracey. She's like hyperventilating. She's telling Tracey she won't survive the trip. So they come up with like a much more clear plan now that this is like a dire situation that she's telling Tracey. On October 2nd, 1999, Steven Beard woke up to discover that his insides were quite literally outside of his body, which I can't believe. I have probably never done a case that involved disembowelment before. I'm doing like 2 in a month span. That's crazy to me. Anyway, he wakes up and he's like, that's weird. Reaches over, calls 911. So Steven, who was 75 at this point, calls 911 and he's like, I need an ambulance. My guts just jumped out of my stomach. They blew out. They blew out of my stomach. They're laying on my stomach. The 911 operator's like, they're laying on your stomach. And then he said, I'm in awful pain. The 911 operator said, how did this happen? He said, it just happened. I just woke up and there they were. So they're like talking to the operator's like, I'm having a hard time figuring out what happened. And he's like, well, so am I. He's like, I don't know what happened. I've never had this happen before. As if this is a thing that regularly happens to anyone, let alone unsuspecting people who just wake up and their insides are up. He's like, he's in the minority. He's like, this has never happened to me before. So then he's like, hey, can you call my wife's number? She's on the other side of the house. I'm assuming they have like multiple lines in their house. This was like a 5,000 square foot house. Maybe bigger than that. I can't really remember. So they're like, sure, we'll call her, whatever. She obviously doesn't answer. So the ambulance gets there and the entire house is locked. So they had to break in through the patio door. So then they get to Steven. They get him on the stretcher. They're looking at the wound. And at this point, they're assuming he had like a failed hernia surgery or something of that nature that like would involve your intestines being all fucked up. But as they're loading him on the stretcher, they see a freshly fired shell casing from a 20 gauge shotgun. So now they're like, oh, this wasn't an attempted murder. So Celeste, her daughters, and her daughter's boyfriend follow the police car to the hospital. And at this point, the sheriff's investigator is going there to question them. Like, who would want to kill this 75-year-old man? Well, when asked just that, one of her daughter's boyfriends says, what about crazy Tracey? And when asking around, the investigators would find that multiple people suggested Tracey's name. They noted that for as many people that suggested Tracey, Celeste was the one person who did not suggest her. So 2 days after the shooting, the police are already paying a visit to Tracey. This is like a very obvious lead. Everyone is naming this lady. They asked if she owned a 20-gauge shotgun, which was obviously the type of shell they found at the scene. Tracey said she did. Tracey was like very into skeet shooting and had this personal engraved shotgun with her name on it and was very reluctant to turn it over. Well, she agreed to let them take it. And on October 8th, Tracey was arrested and charged with assault after they were able to figure out that the casing at the scene of the crime came from her gun with her name on it, just using a gun at a crime scene that has her name literally etched into it. So we know that Stephen Beard did not immediately die. He called 911. So that was an unforeseen obstacle because despite the extensive injuries, Stephen seemed to be getting better. He had 7 surgeries and he was even released from the hospital. The injuries, although awful, were only in that one spot. So they were only in his stomach. It's not like he got shot in the head also or anywhere else. It was localized there. However, while the wound was technically healing, the main concern of wounds like this is the threat of infection. When the digestive tract is perforated, the leakage can prove deadly through any number of infections, including sepsis, because it's like leaking into your bloodstream, which is exactly what happened only 4 days after he was released from the hospital on January 25th, 2000. By all accounts, Celeste was seemingly attentive to him during his last days. She spent a lot of time by his side, blah, 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 blah. We know that what she stood to inherit upon his death, so that part isn't really shocking to me. She was probably honestly so relieved that this was all almost over that it probably did portray itself as genuine care. Celeste would say after his death that I miss talking to him. I miss being when I was with him. I was so sure of everything. She said her world fell apart. I was just in a severe emotional depression. I was drinking heavily. I was taking a lot of medication and I didn't want to be alone. I loved him with all my heart. That is just like not true. So she's like acting like she's very sad. And then she has to act extremely shocked when the police arrest Tracey because it's obvious that she knows Tracey. So she said, I couldn't imagine anybody I knew being involved in the shooting of my husband. She said the arrest of Tracey just shocked her. Meanwhile, Celeste and Tracey were still in contact with each other. It wasn't until the summer of 2000, so like after Tracey had been in jail for like a couple months, that they, quote, broke up. Tracey said Celeste was becoming a little unhinged. She was becoming hysterical. They both agreed that they would just like not be seeing each other anymore. They're like, we can't do this anymore. Despite it being seemingly neutral, Tracey still took it very hard. She tried to overdose on Valium, and she was still taking on all of the blame for the death of Steven. She's still like doing this for Celeste. She's taking all of that with her. That was until Tracey realized that her relationship with Celeste may have been a sham the entire time. A few weeks after they broke up, Tracey read in the paper that Celeste had gotten married. Literally like 3 weeks after they had like broken up in jail. She's literally married to someone else. And to Tracey, you know, she thought they were going to be together forever. This and that. So this obviously leads Tracey to believe that Celeste really had no interest in being with her. Because like she was obviously seeing this man for quite some time. So Tracey was like, all right, all gloves are off. She told CBS that she's off at her honeymoon in Aspen. Even I couldn't overlook that. It was like everything started unraveling very quickly for me after that article. I started realizing Celeste had been lying to me all along, that this man was not abusing her, and that she had married him for his money, and that she had been lying to me about our relationship. All of it was a farce. So she decided to sit down with investigators and tell them what really happened. Tracey told the investigators that Celeste set it all up. Steven was asleep, the doors were open, and Celeste was in another wing of the house. She was able to slip in, fire a single shot in the dark, and slip out unnoticed. Celeste was arrested on March 28th, 2002, and charged with her former husband's murder because the charges obviously got upgraded from assault to murder when he died from a result of the wound. A judge set bail at $8 million, noting that Celeste had earned $2 million after selling the mansion just months after Steven died. Steven's accountant would later reveal that Celeste had spent $321,000 during October and November of 1999, an additional $249,000 by December 10th. So a few weeks, and another $100,000 in the 6 weeks leading up to March 31st, $2,000. So right after he died, she spent all this money, like while he was healing and then right when he died. So Tracey accepted a plea deal of 20 years in exchange for her testimony against Celeste. She took the witness stand for a total of 15 hours over 3 days, where she explained their entire affair and the entire plot to murder Steven. The prosecutor also preyed on Tracey's testimony and tried to really drive it home that Celeste had used someone vulnerable like Tracey in order to do a job for her. Prosecutor Allison Weitzel told jurors she couldn't stand Steven Beard. She talked to people about how much she hated him. He disgusted her. What happened here is a simple case of a greedy, manipulative defendant who took advantage of a mentally ill woman who was in love with her. She told Tracey that with Steven gone, they could be together. Co-prosecutor Gary Cobb said in his opening statement, "A lot of people think the Bible says that money is the root of all evil, and what the Bible actually says is that the love of money is the root of all evil. Celeste Beard loved money more than she loved anything else. Because of that, she had Steve Beard killed." Tracey said, "I just saw this woman that I loved in a desperate situation trying to find a way to survive this man that was so awful. She had a plan. She wanted me to shoot him at Toro Canyon with my shotgun. I was willing to shoot him, and I went and I did it." She added that she and Steven Beard had been betrayed by the same woman. Obviously, there was mountains of evidence in regards to their relationship. Everyone who worked with Tracey knew she was dating someone named Celeste. Celeste was going to work events with Tracey, kissing her in public, being very open. Their therapist testified to their relationship. There were actual love notes between them. Like, it is very, very clear that they were in a relationship, or that Celeste was leading Tracey on hard. It's very clear that Tracey thought they were in a relationship, I should say. Despite all of that, Celeste's lawyers went with the defense that Tracey was just insane and she was obsessed with Celeste. They called her an aggressive lesbian. They commented on her mental health, saying Tracey Tarlton is a psychotic. She's been diagnosed as having delusions and hearing voices that aren't there and seeing things that aren't there. So they're like really preying on the fact that she was mentally ill. In the pretrial dispositions, Celeste had denied even kissing Tracey. They said Tracey wanted it, but Celeste rebuffed her. She had this fantasy of being Celeste's lover. Celeste said, "I never had sex with Tracey. Never." Like, she was going all in, that Tracey was just some girl who was obsessed with her. Celeste said she's crazy. That's the only way I can describe her. She's nuts. Obviously, that is not true, and her daughters had testified as such. They testified about catching them in bed together multiple times, catching them kissing. They testified that she hated Steven and told them multiple times that she wished he would die. They testified that she would run off and meet her ex-husband or sneak away and see Tracey. Like, she wasn't into Steven at all. Another bombshell piece of evidence was the tape recording of a conversation between Celeste and Christina, in which Celeste told her of trying to hire someone to kill Tracey, apparently to prevent her from testifying. So this is after Tracey was already arrested. Celeste was talking about how she hired someone to try and kill Tracey to, like, stop all this from happening. Their financial people testified as to Celeste's truly insane spending. They testified that upon Steven's death, Celeste stood to inherit half of his estate, or $6 million. Her lawyers tried to shrug off all of that by saying Celeste is not a gold digger. She did spend a lot of money, and Steve showered her with money. They were happy. She made him happy, and he made her happy. He gave her anything she wanted. So they're basically saying she was spending all of this money anyway, so why would she have to kill him to keep spending the money? He wanted to make her happy, so he was always going to let her spend that money, which we know wasn't true. The defense and prosecution gave their closing statements after 1 month. Co-prosecutor Gary Cobb said, was she in a relationship with Tracey Tarlton, and did that relationship lead Tracey Tarlton, at Celeste Beard's encouragement, to shoot Steven Beard? I think the evidence is overwhelming of that. He also said that Celeste wanted Steven dead because she would inherit millions. A divorce would have been an entirely different financial picture. $6 million versus $500,000. When we know she could spend $500,000 6 months, that's a big difference. Weitzel, lead prosecutor, summed it all up. She said, "Folks, if you say that Celeste Beard is not guilty with all this evidence, then you're going to tell her that money can buy anything." The defense, again, leaned on the unreliability of Tracey. "This soap opera that we went through for 4 weeks does not prove Celeste is a killer," her lawyer said, who tells the jury that money had nothing to do with Steven Beard's murder. Rather, he argued that it was Tracey's obsession. He said Tracey Tarlton killed Steven Beard on her own for her own selfish reasons, for her own sick reasons. The only evidence they have is Tracey Tarlton, and Tracey Tarlton can't be believed because she is a crazy woman. They said that they have not proven Celeste Beard guilty because they have not corroborated the unbelievable testimony of Tracey Tarlton. So they're basically saying you can't find Celeste guilty because you don't even know what Tracey saying is true. So how can you, without one, you can't do the other. Jurors deliberated for 23 hours over 3 days before voting to convict Celeste and find her guilty of capital murder and injury to an elderly individual. Prosecutors did not seek the death penalty, and the conviction brought a mandatory life sentence. After she was convicted, she cried, "My life is over. I'm devastated. I'm scared. I'm terrified. I don't want to go to prison. I don't want to be with people that have actually murdered somebody." She said, "I've lost my children. I bear responsibility, and I feel responsible in the fact that I brought Tracey into our lives. But am I responsible for Tracey going into the house and shooting Steven? No, I am not responsible for that." Steven's loved ones were still given the opportunity to address Celeste, because remember, he has adult children involved. His son, Steven Beard III, told Celeste that he hoped that she burned in hell. Her own daughter, Christina, addressed her. Christina said, "You say we turned on you. Well, you turned on us. You turned on the whole Beard family. He let you into his home, loved you, honored and obeyed you, and you violated him and murdered him. Shame on you." Celeste, by law, has to serve at least 40 years of her sentence before she would be eligible for parole, by which time she would be 80. In TV interviews, Celeste continued to deny any involvement. She said she was a victim of her daughters, whom she accused of being motivated by money. She would tell CBS, "I hate to admit it, but the only reason why they could have turned on me was for the money. They had 2 million reasons to lie." That's because with Celeste arrested for his murder, his estate went to his own children, and also Celeste's daughters got a piece of it because Steven also legally adopted them when they were like 17 years old. And it really seemed like they really did care for and like Steven. Christina later did an interview saying how funny Steven was and how like they had gotten really attached to him. And despite how rocky Celeste and Steven's relationship was, they were together for like 7 years. So her daughter spent the last 7 years living with Steven. No matter whether or not Celeste was around, they were always around Steven. So I imagine they had a much closer relationship than what is explained or not explained at all in these articles, kind of glossed over. Celeste told Oxygen, "It makes me sick. You always hear blood is thicker than water. Not in my case. I want to call them the Menendez sisters," which is just an insane thing to say about your own children, especially since, as more evidence comes out, it is probably likely that the Menendez brothers were abused by their parents. If you are not familiar with the Menendez brothers, that's one of the extremely long cases that I did before we switched over. You should still be able to find it if you can't find it, because I did pull some of the old ones off the feed to make room and just sort of clean it up. If that's not on there anymore, let me know. I'll re-add it so that you guys can listen to it. It's very fascinating. If you know nothing about the Menendez brothers, it's a huge case. So as for updates, Tracey was actually released on parole in August of 2011, just 10 years in prison, and it seemed like she actually had a lot of support upon her release. According to Ken's 5 News, San Antonio community members held a fundraiser for Tracey upon her release. They held a reading of some of the letters Tracey wrote in prison. In exchange, those who attended donated about $20. Though it might not seem like a lot of money to some people, for like someone like Tracey who's trying to transition back into the community, it was extremely appreciated. Tracey said it has been exciting and hopeful, but it has also been difficult because you don't have any easy access getting a job. You don't have any easy access to renting an apartment because you have like that felony status attached to you now. The people who know me and know my story have been very, very supportive of me, and I would not have been able to make it without these people. Celeste won't be eligible for parole until 2042, technically, but I don't see her ever getting out. It reminds me a lot of Pamela Smart in the way that, did Celeste pull the trigger? No, but she did swindle someone else into doing it for her and then refused to take even an iota of responsibility for it. Like, maybe if she was honest about her role and was remorseful, they would parole her, but I don't see that happening for her until she takes responsibility. And like Pamela Smart, if she ever does do it, I think it will be way too late. Like, I think Pamela Smart just finally took a little bit of responsibility for her role in Greg's murder, like a couple years ago, like decades later, and it's too late. That's also a 2-part case that I did. If you want to listen to it, that one's also very interesting. Although I just spoiled it for you, but whatever. If you can't find it, let me know and I'll re-add it. The Austin American-Statesman reported that in October of 2017, a man dressed as Santa Claus... Oh, I put this in the wrong spot. I meant to do this when I was talking about her daughters. But if I don't want to lose something, and it's the only thing I have from the source I'm using, I'll just copy and paste it at the end, and then so I can save the website and not have to open it anymore. So, another random update. The Austin American-Statesman reported that in October of 2017, a man dressed as Santa Claus for a Halloween party he helped throw shot and killed a partygoer. Jennifer Beard, one of the twins, was living with the shooter at the time and also suffered multiple injuries from the shooting. He didn't just shoot one person. He shot up the entire party. Jennifer was a victim of that. Her twin sister Christina Beard, because I just realized that they took Steven's last name. Her last name is Fritz now. Testified that Jennifer needed 10 surgeries to recover from 2 wounds to the stomach from the shooting. And the last I read, they have still not spoken to their mother since the closing statements of the sentencing. And that was the murder of Steven Beard. Let me know if you have heard of this before, because I had never heard of this before. And I think this may have been the very first episode of Snapped, which is a show on Oxygen. If you're not familiar, I don't know if they do it anymore. It's exactly what it sounds like. It's just a show of I think it's usually women who have just snapped, just lost it and murdered their husband. I think there are some other media pop culture references to this. Obviously, I shouldn't say obviously, but there are a lot of situations where young women marry old men for money. Something strange happens. They inherit all of it. Whatever. It's not, unfortunately, not that uncommon of a crime occurrence. So let me know what you think. I am still taking suggestions so that I can get a good batch of long cases for you while I'm gone after my surgery at the end of January. I've gotten a couple. I'm looking into those. You still have time if you want me to cover something. I'll get into some of the big ones if you guys want me to. I'll do JonBenet Ramsey, Dahmer, things like that. Things I said I would never do. If you guys really want to hear them, if you're really not that familiar, or if you just want to hear my perspective on it, I will do those. But really only if you ask. It's not something that I'm going to just do on my own. So let me know what you guys think. If you're not a subscriber, I urge you to try it. 1 bonus episode a week for a month, essentially. And they are a little shorter, I will say that. But sometimes they're just cases that literally cannot be longer, but are so interesting that they deserve to be heard, I think. So give that a go. If you have trouble finding out how to do that, message me on my personal Instagram. You can try, if I don't answer you on the regular Instagram, try my personal one, _Madison Shelby. Sometimes I just forget to check the true crime one. I just assume nobody looks at it, so then I never look at it. So yeah. Ooh, sorry, Harvey. Sorry. Now I have to go wash this hair dye out of my hair, and you guys have a great weekend. If you're a subscriber, don't forget, I will see you Mondays instead of Fridays now. I will see you Monday with your bonus episode. That is already ready to go. It's very good. It's a little longer. I hope you guys like it. Have a great weekend getting ready for the holidays, and I will see you next week. Bye.